Our MC pours his absolute heart into farming shiitake mushrooms, bringing in a massive income. But this peaceful life, suddenly shattered on purpose by the neighbor next door. Filled with petty jealousy, the guy plants poplar trees right on the property line. He crowds them tight against the mushroom greenhouses, completely blocking every single pathway. Our guy swallows his pride to make peace at the guy's house, but nothing works. The neighbor stubbornly insists his land means his rules, refusing to listen to absolutely anyone. He reaches out to the local authorities multiple times for mediation, but from start to finish, he just cannot find a single effective way to stop this neighbor's sabotage. He just has to let the rival mock him daily and act completely reckless. Instead of arguing or fighting back, our guy quietly returns home. He immediately gets to work building a dedicated drying facility, specifically designed just for processing different mushroom varieties. Thinking back to the early days, he boldly quit his city job to put down roots in the countryside and farm shiitake mushrooms. Quite a few villagers secretly laughed at him. They thought finishing college just to work the fields meant all those years of hard studying were a total and complete waste. Some even bluntly say others in the village already tried growing mushrooms before, and absolutely nobody ever got rich from this specific trade. Facing all this local gossip, our guy stays totally silent. Now watch how he handles the pressure. He just buries his head in technical research. During that first startup year, his sheer lack of experience leads to picking the wrong mushroom strain, ruining a massive batch completely. 20,000 in pure capital vanishes right into thin air. By year 2, the mushroom spores culture successfully and grow really well, but then he cannot find a steady buyer to take the harvest. He ends up hauling them to town for retail sale. A kilo only goes for 2.5, making less money than just planting corn at home. Pushing fiercely into the 3rd year, he finally masters every single planting step. He selects a really high-quality shiitake variety with a perfectly even, consistent physical shape. This makes long-distance transport much easier. He precisely controls the spore fermentation temperature right at exactly 26 degrees. Because even a tiny little temperature fluctuation will seriously impact the final farming results. When the mushrooms sprout, the greenhouse needs plenty of soft, scattered light. At the exact same time, he has to keep the air well ventilated, while completely stopping any cold wind from blowing directly onto the delicate mushroom bodies. Thanks to his highly mature farming experience, he firmly secures a solid 60,000 in pure profit that year. Moving into year 4, he successfully scores a long-term supply partnership with the main fresh food supermarket up in the district. The purchase price for fresh shiitake jumps right to 12 per kilo. Taking that exact opportunity, he expands his farming greenhouses and even hires 2 extra farmhands to help out with all the heavy field work. Calculating it all out, the yearly net income hits an impressive 150,000. The family finances get steadily better, and his father's face finally shows a few real smiles. Every single day, the old man walks back and forth with his cane, carefully inspecting the mushroom greenhouses. Whenever the local neighbors drop by for a chat, he proudly tells absolutely everyone how their family grows a special shiitake variety that sells incredibly well up at the supermarket. And this is exactly when Chu Duck Thang starts purposely targeting our MC. His land and our guy's farming greenhouses sit right next to each other. They are only separated by a narrow field border, barely half a meter wide. He intentionally chooses a wildly fast-growing poplar tree species to plant. He purposely places them right up against the edge of our MC's greenhouses. Can you guess what happens next? The tree gap is under 1 meter. They grow together so incredibly thick, they basically form a solid, impenetrable stone wall. Those poplars shoot up ridiculously fast. In just a single year, they easily add another 3 meters of height. Their branches quickly tangle into a dense canopy, totally blocking out all the natural sunlight coming from the east. And shiitake mushrooms desperately need that soft, scattered light to grow properly. Trapped in a totally dark environment, the mushroom spores might survive just fine, but they absolutely cannot form into complete, fully grown mushrooms anymore. The 3 greenhouses sitting right next to those poplars see a massive, continuous drop in shiitake production. The damage is clearly visible to the naked eye. Bringing meat and wine, our guy goes right to his door to plead his case again. Chu Duck Thang sits eating dinner on his porch. Seeing the gifts in our MC's hands, his attitude stays just as bitterly cold as before. Our guy sets the stuff on the stone step. He quietly begs him to shift the tree line just 2 meters to the east. Immediately, Chu Duck Thang chews his pickled veggies and arrogantly brushes him off, claiming his land means he gets to make the absolute final call. How to plant, the exact spacing, It is not an outsider's place to interfere. Our MC holds his temper, explaining the whole situation clearly. The trees blocking the light directly killed 30% of his current mushroom harvest. But the neighbor does not care about that even a little bit. Instead, he flips it around entirely, blaming our guy's supposedly weak and pathetic farming skills, pushing absolutely every single problem right onto him. Time after time, he tries reasoning gently, but the guy stays completely stubborn, even daring our MC to go report him or file complaints. He is totally convinced nobody will ever find any legal loophole to actually control what he does on his property. And that is not all. He even uses his older senior status to suppress our guy, casually insulting his family with words while acting arrogant to the extreme. Completely helpless, our guy just grabs his unaccepted gifts and silently trudges back home. Seeing our guy come back empty-handed, his dad just lets out this heavy sigh. He brings up the past, how the grandfather once went right to their door. He swallowed his pride, practically begging them, and still got absolutely nothing. His dad tells him to just let it go. Just move on, but deep down, our MC has already made up his mind. This little showdown, it is nowhere near over yet. The very next day, he heads straight to the village committee for arbitration. The village chief is pretty helpless here. He explains that planting trees on their own contracted land is totally legal. Even if Chu Duck Thang is blocking the sunlight on purpose, there is just no rule against it. It is perfectly within bounds. Not giving up, he actually invites the forestry station guys to come down and check out the site. They make it clear, since this land is not zoned for forestry, there are no strict rules on spacing. The way the neighbor planted those trees completely follows the regulations. What makes him feel even more helpless is the law itself. Sunlight rights only apply to residential buildings where people actually live. Agricultural farming, on the other hand, is completely outside the scope of protection. In the very end, everyone just advises them to try and settle things privately. Once Chu Duck Thang hears our guy went everywhere for help and failed, his ego goes through the roof. He gets incredibly arrogant. He openly insults the whole family right in front of the village, spreading nasty rumors left and right. He mocks him for being a college grad who came back home to start a business, calling him a complete failure who has absolutely no clue how rural society actually works. Now pay attention to this next part. While tending his mushrooms one afternoon, our guy accidentally overhears Chu Duck Thang talking privately with his son. That is when a massive, years-old grudge finally comes to light. Back in the day, his dad contracted the village fish pond. Just as business started picking up, Chu Duck Thang held a bitter grudge. He secretly poisoned the water, entirely wiping out the whole batch of young fish without leaving one. Back then, after losing the bidding war for that pond, the man held on to that spite, targeting our MC's family at every single turn. His dad eventually had to leave town to work off the debt. He ended up injured and sick, suffering from chronic illness year after year. All of this misery was a direct gift from that guy. And now, seeing our MC actually succeeding, seeing his life improve, Chu Duck Thang pulls his old tricks again. He wants to use that sunlight block to completely ruin our guy's livelihood. Finding out the complete truth, our MC swallows his burning rage. Instead of recklessly charging over to confront him, he calms down and carefully crafts a perfectly flawless plan. He rushes to finish building his mushroom drying facility, but he deliberately designs the massive heat exhaust vents to point directly and accurately right at Chu Duck Thang's poplar trees. Once the mushroom drying facility officially goes into operation, the equipment blasts out a continuous stream of hot air, hitting around 50 to 60 degrees, blowing eastward day and night without stopping. It doesn't take long. Those poplar trees right near the exhaust vent are the first to show damage. The intense heat literally scorches the bark, leaving huge wounded patches. Soon after, the bark peels off completely, and the leaves shrivel up into crispy, dried clumps. Tree after tree just withers away, seeing his precious woods completely ruined. Chu Duck Thang flies into an absolute rage and marches right over to demand answers. He firmly insists our MC built this facility just for revenge. But our guy calmly fires back. Building a drying facility for agricultural products is perfectly reasonable and legal. The wind direction is just nature taking its course. Since he insisted on planting those trees incredibly densely right on the property line to block the sunlight, he should have easily foreseen this exact outcome. The argument keeps going in circles, so they call in the village officials and the forestry station workers to mediate once again. After the professionals do a thorough on-site check, they actually conclude the poplars withered simply because they were planted way too densely. Poor ventilation, naturally dry weather, plus plus getting baked by that hot wind. It was a huge combination of factors. They cannot unilaterally claim our MC did this on purpose at all. So this whole issue just has to be dropped. Boiling with frustration, he asks so my row of trees just withered away for absolutely nothing. Everyone simply reminds him that farming naturally comes with risks. If you make your own bed, you have to lie in it. Can you even imagine his face? Chu Duk Thang stands before his withered woods, his expression turning incredibly dark, looking honestly worse than cracked old tree bark. Quite a few villagers gather around to watch the drama. They whisper among themselves, pointing out how he intentionally used those trees to make life miserable for someone else. In the end, he is totally the one who ruined himself. He brought this entirely on himself. Getting a result like this is exactly what he deserves. Who told him to plant them so ridiculously close together anyway? It only ended up backfiring hard. Completely humiliated by the village gossip, Chu Duk Thang suddenly snaps his head around. He starts shouting loudly at the crowd, enjoying the whole spectacle. Seeing this, the villagers immediately scatter in the blink of an eye. Now, he is left completely alone on that huge plot of land, fuming with anger while facing his ruined woods. He lights a cigarette, takes 2 drags, and violently throws it to the ground to vent his endless frustration. Dead silence. My father just stands there at the door of the mushroom greenhouse, quietly taking in this whole entire scene. He waits until Chu Duk Thang completely disappears from sight, still carrying all that bitter resentment. Then my dad slowly walks over to me, lets out a low sigh, and mutters how 20 years have flashed right by. After saying that, he leans heavily on his cane and slowly heads back toward the house. Every single tap against the dirt just sounds so helpless, echoing all the pain of those passing years. Time moves. I stay rooted to that exact spot, watching my dad's skinny, hunched over back. My mind just keeps flashing back to those old stories I accidentally overheard a long time ago. I remember how Chu Duk Thang stood there with his arms crossed back in the day, just staring coldly, watching my dad cry silently next to a pond full of dead fish. Inside our drying factory, the machines just keep on running. That burning hot air pours endlessly out of the exhaust vents without stopping. It sweeps right past those long dead poplar trees, blowing straight toward that exact same old, abandoned fish pond we filled up and left behind so many years ago in the distance. Later that autumn, Chu Duk Thang actually hired guys to rip out every single one of those dead poplar trees by the roots. They worked non-stop for 3 straight days and nights. The roaring sound of chainsaws echoed from morning till night without a single break. Villagers walking by would stop and stare. They just saw him, shirtless, picking up those neatly sawed tree trunks and carrying them one by one onto his tractor. Those heavy logs slammed hard against the truck bed, making these loud, echoing thuds. Even the deepest roots got dug up completely. He piled them at the edge of the field, and from far away, they looked exactly like a pile of dry bones bleaching in the sun. I stand there quietly watching from the mushroom greenhouse door. I wait until he clears out the very last log. The second he stands up to catch his breath, our eyes lock right across that narrow little ridge between our fields. He calls out my name, Duong Su Dong. I do not answer him at all. You can feel the tension snapping between them. He casually brushes the thick mud off his hands and strides right up to our property line. He completely tore up this whole area, leaving nothing but bumpy, freshly turned dirt. He stomps his foot hard on the ground beneath him and tells me that even if the trees are gone, this piece of land is still sitting right here. He tells me to remember those exact words. I stay completely silent, not saying a single thing back. He turns around, getting ready to walk away. He takes a few steps, then spins back around to glare at me again. He says, Duong Su Dong, since your little drying factory is so amazing, why don't you just tell me what else you can destroy? He really wants to see exactly what kind of crops I can manage to ruin next. I just calmly reply. I tell Uncle Chu that I built this factory strictly for drying and processing mushrooms, and there is absolutely zero other purpose behind it. He lights up a cigarette, his tone dripping with total defiance. Fine, he tells me, just go focus on your little mushroom business and nothing else. From now on, we stay out of each other's way, and whoever has the real skills will come out on top. After saying that, he just bites down on his cigarette and walks off. Not even a month later, heavy construction starts up again on that exact same plot of land where those poplar trees used to be. He is not planting trees this time. Instead, he starts putting up these massive, connected farming greenhouses side by side. He uses brand new, heavy-duty steel pipes for the frames and covers them with extra thick plastic tarps. Every single material he picks out is seriously high quality. 7 or 8 workers bust their backs for over a dozen days, and soon, 7 perfectly straight greenhouses are towering right at the edge of the field. They look totally eye-catching, shining under the sun. I take a walk over there during my free time and catch Chu Duck Thang squatting by the greenhouse door, eating his boxed lunch. When he sees me walking over, he immediately puts his bowl down, jumps to his feet to greet me, and enthusiastically invites me inside to take a look around. I push the plastic curtain aside and step in. It is pretty hot inside, and the air is heavy with the smell of fresh soil and agricultural fertilizer. He already planted off-season Chinese tune vegetables everywhere in the dirt. The young plants are growing super evenly, already reaching up to knee-high, creating this massive sea of vibrant green, completely overflowing with life. Get ready for the bragging. Chu Duck Thang looks at me with this ridiculously smug face and asks if I have ever even seen off-season tune vegetables like this before. He says he plans to flood the market with them right around the Lunar New Year. Even the average-looking ones will sell for 40 to 50 dong a kilo, and the absolute premium quality crop could easily hit 60 dong a kilo. I just give him a slight nod, and right on cue, he starts poking around, asking about the selling price of our mushrooms. The second he hears our price, that mocking look returns to his face. He straight up tells me that the income from just one single vegetable greenhouse of his is already enough to completely match 3 of my mushroom greenhouses. And with all 7 of his greenhouses combined, the profit gap between us is going to be incredibly massive. I take that chance to casually ask him exactly how much capital he actually invested into this huge new crop. He openly admits he poured in over 200,000 dong total. Part of it came from a credit union loan, and the rest was scraped together by borrowing from literally every single relative and family member he could find. While talking, his face is just full of pure arrogance. He flat out declares that if you want to pull in high profits, you have to be brave enough to invest heavy capital. He says your drying shed is supposed to be pretty impressive, right? Claiming it can even dry out a massive tree until it completely withers away. Right now, I am planting all these fragrant vegetable sprouts, completely inside this tightly sealed greenhouse. I just want to see exactly how you can possibly manage to affect my crops growing safely in here now. I try explaining over and over again. The drying shed is only used for processing fresh shiitake mushrooms, and it was never actually meant to target anyone else's crops at all. But he absolutely refuses to listen to a single word I say, casually flicking his cigarette ash onto those fresh young vegetable sprouts while openly mocking me with complete and utter disrespect. He proudly declares that once his own fragrant sprouts hit the market in huge quantities and bring in serious profits, he wouldn't even bother looking at these little mushroom greenhouses, even if someone handed them right over to him completely for free. He even goes as far as teasing me out loud, saying if I cannot keep my farming business running later on, I should just openly ask him for some help. He claims he is totally ready to take over my mushroom greenhouse, and he would even have enough spare cash left over to financially support my old father's retirement. Right at this exact moment, Chu Si Thang's son, Chu Tiu Kun, comes out from the far end of the greenhouse, carrying a long watering hose right over his shoulder. The second he spots me, he aggressively tosses out a joke, bluntly stating that my mushroom farming operation is ultimately just some pathetic little side hustle for small-time losers. Honestly, you can see exactly where this is going. He says once they strike it rich, they will directly buy out my entire greenhouse, tear everything down, and rebuild it completely just to grow their own sprouts instead. Chu Si Thang laughs out loud, patting his son proudly right on the back of the neck, joking that they could keep me around later to help watch over their own massive greenhouses. He claims that with all my experience growing various kinds of mushrooms, taking care of their fragrant sprouts would naturally be super easy for me. The father and son look at each other and laugh loudly, completely failing to hide the blatant disrespect dripping from their arrogant words. My face shows zero emotion, and I simply wish them great success with their business politely. May the money flow in like water. Chu Si Thang finally drops that goofy smiling face, telling me seriously that he is dropping the old tree incident. But from now on, we mind our own business. No dirty tricks allowed. He warns that if I ever try sneaking around behind his back, he absolutely will not let me off the hook easily at all. After dropping those heavy words, he immediately tells me to leave. I turn around and step out of the greenhouse. The blazing sunlight, so bright it practically hurts my eyes. From right behind me, I can still hear the father and son quietly gossiping and laughing about my situation. From beginning to end, they just treat me like absolute dirt. That night, I sit completely alone inside my own greenhouse, thinking for a long time, staring at the massive pile of waste mushroom substrate already gathered in the far corner. Originally, planned to spend some cash hiring people to clean it all up perfectly, but now I have completely put that idea on hold. When my father comes to the greenhouse, he immediately guesses that Chu Sitheng built that new setup. Fully aware, the guy invested a ton of money, clearly showing his iron will to confront me directly and finally see who really comes out on top. In this bitter rivalry, I openly share my honest thoughts with my father, pouring out the entire hidden truth I accidentally overheard regarding how that guy secretly ruined our family fish pond with tainted chemicals many years ago. My dad's hands grip his walking stick so hard that blue veins begin bulging out as he slowly recounts the past. Back then, he actually went straight to Chu Sitheng's front door to confront him directly and demand a proper explanation for what happened. But the guy stubbornly denied everything, and since everyone in the village was absolutely terrified of his ruthless ways, not a single person ever dared to step up and testify. Even though the police eventually found traces of dangerous pesticide left behind in the pond water samples back then, they still lacked enough solid, concrete evidence to actually convict him. In the end, they just had to let the whole thing go. I pull out my phone and play a secret audio recording I managed to capture earlier. The audio captures perfectly clear proof of Chu Sitheng's own voice admitting he secretly sabotaged our fish pond. Yet after listening to it, my father's face stays surprisingly calm and entirely unbothered. He bluntly tells me that just having these empty spoken words alone will not solve our problem at all, and it is still nowhere near enough to take him down. That guy could easily brush it off, claiming he was simply bragging wildly during casual chatter, making it fundamentally useless as any sort of valid legal evidence to actually secure a conviction. I already have a totally flawless plan mapped out inside. Watch how this plays out. I'm planning to swallow my anger, quietly waiting for that perfect moment to leave Chu Sitheng with absolutely zero chance of recovering ever again. After hearing this, my dad offers no more advice. But right before leaving, he softly gives me one simple instruction. Go take that empty abandoned pond next door, dig it a lot deeper, and fix it up a bit. The very next morning arrives. I deliberately draw a very clear dividing line right at our shared property border, neatly stacking every single bag of waste mushroom substrate safely inside my own land. Then I immediately start digging up the earth to build a massively oversized fermentation pit for all the waste. Once the pit is completely finished, I dump a huge amount of that waste inside, throwing a thick plastic tarp over it to start a tightly sealed, highly intense fermentation process. Chu Sitheng notices the loud commotion over on my side and intentionally strolls over to investigate the situation, utterly filled with suspicion as he asks me exactly what the purpose of digging this massive hole is. I just casually brush him off, claiming it is only a simple dumping spot for fermenting agricultural waste to make some basic fertilizer. He is deeply suspicious, but he honestly cannot find a single flaw to argue against. After snooping around and finding absolutely nothing, he has no choice but to walk away. But before leaving, he brings up the past again, acting all generous about those ruined plants. He claims he is finally letting it go, telling me to just keep my head down and live a quiet life. I calmly give him a simple answer. Pests and natural disasters just happen. These natural events have never actually been something that human strength could ever hope to control. That single sentence makes his face turn incredibly ugly. He is boiling with frustration inside, but he cannot find a way to refute it. So he angrily storms right off. Early spring rolls around pretty quickly, and all sorts of agricultural and forestry pests start multiplying and spreading wildly. The first one to notice something totally wrong is Chu Tiu-kun. Tiny boreholes start appearing everywhere on the fragrant mahogany tree trunks. Scattered around those tiny openings are crushed and completely ruined wood chips. At first, he just brushes it off as a common bug problem, sprays a quick layer of pesticide, and stops paying attention entirely. But here is where it gets crazy. Soon, those holes grow massive, entirely hollowing out the mahogany branches until they snap. The young leaves slowly turn a sickly yellow and wither away. The growth of the fragrant mahogany across his entire greenhouse completely plummets out of control. Chu Sitheng is totally panicking right now. He rushes to invite professional technicians from the forestry station over to figure out the exact cause immediately. After a thorough check, the technician immediately confirms on the spot that longhorn beetles are doing all this damage. This highly destructive pest actually burrows deep inside the tree to gnaw away the wood structure. By the time visible damage shows up on the outside, The inside is already severely hollowed out by the bugs. It is basically impossible to save. The technician traces the spreading path of the bugs and quickly spots my discarded mushroom spawn fermentation tank sitting quietly right over here. He bluntly states that the environment created by my discarded mushroom tank is quite literally the perfect warm cradle for those longhorn beetles. It is their absolute favorite place to breed and multiply. Once the larvae hatch and mature, they fly everywhere, and the very first things they invade are the nearby crops and forests. Hearing this makes Chu Si Thang turn completely ashen. He instantly insists that I deliberately built my tank up when maliciously scheming to target and destroy his precious fragrant mahogany greenhouse. I just keep my perfectly calm attitude. Building a mushroom tank to recycle agricultural waste is just a normal, compliant operation. How the pests happen to spread is simply a natural phenomenon. From start to finish, I have not broken a single rule or regulation. No matter how furious he feels, he cannot produce even half a shred of actual evidence to accuse me. Blind with rage, Chu Tiu-kun almost rushes in to get physical right there, but Chu Si-thang forcefully holds him back. After facing all these setbacks, Chu Si-thang slowly pieces things together. Connecting every past event, he finally realizes that I have known the truth for a very long time. Honestly, I already knew everything about him secretly poisoning my fish pond back then. I do not even bother trying to hide it. I flat out tell him I heard every single word of his sneaky bragging. Now watch his reaction. Once the truth drops, his face turns horribly pale. So weak, his usual arrogant and domineering energy completely vanishes. Filled with bitter unwillingness and total defeat, he just grabs his son and hurriedly walks away. For the next few days, Chu Si-thang desperately runs around seeking solutions. First, he begs the village committee to mediate. After checking the facts, the village officials clearly state that fermenting mushroom spawn as fertilizer is a normal agricultural recycling method. It totally complies with all the relevant rules. Outsiders simply have absolutely zero right to interfere or stop it. Then he frantically runs over to the forestry station begging for help. The staff there gives him the exact same conclusion. A massive longhorn beetle outbreak is just a natural disaster. You cannot just unilaterally force the blame for a pest outbreak onto my fermentation tank. Even when he actually calls the police for help and drags the Environmental Protection Department out for an inspection, the final results remain exactly the same. All my business operations are completely legal and compliant, without touching a single restrictive clause. In the very end, he just has to swallow this absolutely massive loss. Chu Si-thang knocks on every single door, but he hits a wall every time, left without half a solution. That day, I happened to bump into him right outside the local police station. His head hangs low, footsteps drag heavily, back completely hunched over. It is just totally different from his arrogant, aggressive posture by the field months ago. Seeing me, he completely freezes. His mouth opens, then slowly closes again, unable to utter half a word. Only when I walk right past him, his gloomy voice drifts over. DGCUN, you do not play fair. People always say to leave a way out, but this is just ruthless. I don't stop walking. I don't even bother to glance back for a second. Pretty soon after that, the massive greenhouse for the prized mahogany shoots, the one Chu Si-thang poured his absolute heart and soul into building, completely collapses into ruin. Almost all of his prized crops just dry up and die off completely. The lucky few left standing, their leaves are totally yellowed, barely hanging on to life, and their trunks are just completely riddled with nasty beetle holes. Chu Tiu-kun straps on a heavy sprayer, exhaustingly dousing everything day after day. The chemical pesticide literally pools on the dirt ground, but it's completely useless. Those longhorn beetles are hiding deep inside the solid trunks, just happily feasting away. Spraying the outside of the trees doesn't do a single thing at all. A few days later, the staff from the credit union actually shows up to inspect the place in person. Seeing the greenhouse sitting there in absolute, desolate ruins, they just snap a few quick pictures, constantly shake their heads, and walk right out. That very same afternoon, formal notice demanding the immediate repayment of his bank loan gets delivered right to Chu Si-thang's front door. Right after that, a whole angry group of his relatives shows up demanding their money. His married sister aggressively confronts him right in front of everyone. She demands her life savings back, demanding to know what happened to his big promises about making them all rich. His cousin storms in, absolutely furious. He threatens to completely seize his house and all remaining assets if he doesn't pay up right now. Even his brother-in-law drags his own wife and kids over, crying and screaming a storm, forcing him to return the hard-earned cash they meant to use for a new house. The courtyard is pure chaos. Cars, people, and endless loud arguing. Chu Si-thang just squats heavily on the doorstep in dead silence, taking the vicious abuse without a word. His wife completely loses her mind with anger. She rushes out sobbing, loudly complaining about her misery. The whole scene just spirals into total disaster. After a really long standoff, Chu Si-thang quietly pushes his way through the dense crowd and walks straight out. He ignores his family, screaming his name, never bothering to look back once. By dusk, he wanders to my field alone. Watch how the tables turn here. I'm squatting by the mushroom greenhouse at the time, cleaning up the spawn. When I look up, I see that the man standing there has completely lost that arrogant, superior attitude he loved throwing around before. His shoulders are slumped heavily. His whole body looks incredibly thin and pretty terribly haggard. He calls out to me, "Please, Tiu Eng, just move your mushroom fermentation tanks somewhere else for me. If you move them a bit further away, the pests naturally won't head toward my greenhouse anymore." His voice is incredibly hoarse and weak, totally submissive now. I just calmly look at him and reply, "Uncle Chu, these pest breeding is just nature taking its course. I really don't have any possible way to interfere with that. That's just nature." He slowly looks up at me. He starts gradually losing control of his emotions, straight up accusing me of deliberately targeting him at every turn. He even offers to pay whatever price I name, willing to spend his own money to make me move the tanks. I tell him this was never an issue that money could solve. When arguing gets him absolutely nowhere, he shifts tactics, bringing up our years as neighbors, rambling endlessly about all our past good TIs and shared history. The evening sky gets darker, and the bright light from the mushroom greenhouse illuminates his exhausted, heavily aged face. It's really only been a few short months that passed, but somehow, he suddenly looks like he's aged 10 full years. He finishes speaking, and his legs just give out entirely. He drops to both knees right in front of me, his whole body shaking slightly against the cold, hard ground. I point toward the house and tell him, "Uncle Chu, you're kneeling to the wrong guy. The person you really need to apologize to is standing right inside there." Chu Si-thang follows my hand. He sees my father leaning on his cane, standing totally silent at the door. His silhouette looks incredibly frail and thin in the dark night. He stays frozen on his knees. His lips keep moving constantly, but he can't get a single word out. My father just watches in silence for a moment, then slowly walks back inside. The tapping of his cane fades away into the distance. I just quietly lower my voice and tell him he should really head home. Seeing that I'm absolutely not backing down or going easy on him, Chu Si-thang is filled with pure, crushing despair and desperately tries to force my hand. I'm done holding back now. This is where it all comes out. I slowly bring up the old history from years ago, how he secretly poisoned our fish pond, forcing my dad to work incredibly dangerous jobs just to pay off the massive debt, and how that led to him being severely crippled. I list it out, piece by piece. It's never been about me holding a petty grudge. It's because he was absolutely and utterly heartless back then. Chu Si-thang drops his hands in complete silence, his entire body totally stripped of all that old confidence. I make it crystal clear to him, I never once planned to push him to his death. I just want for him to fully pay back everything he owes my family after all these long years. After saying that, I just turn around and walk right back into the mushroom greenhouse. By the time I finally step back outside again, he's been long gone. There are just 2 very clear knee prints left behind in the dirt, completely empty and hollow. Over these recent years, I haven't stopped moving forward to gather solid evidence for a single second. Secretly recorded audio tapes, pesticide purchase receipts from the agricultural supply store, and my dad's official injury medical records. I've absolutely got every single piece of it all. But the harsh truth is, all of these are just indirect pieces. They can't form a complete, solid chain of evidence to actually convict him yet. This was his real safety net, the exact reason Chu Duck-thang always acted so fearlessly arrogant. For all this time, but I didn't give up. I immediately went everywhere, asking the local villagers who lived around that old fish pond years ago. After running around and searching tirelessly, I finally found a villager named Tun who knew the whole truth. And get this, he actually pulled out an old school videotape that his elderly father had carefully kept hidden away for many years. The video quality is pretty rough, sure, but it clearly captures the entire process from that specific year with shocking detail. It shows Chu Duck-thang sneaking around, pouring pesticides into our fish pond. With this rock-solid evidence finally in my hands, I immediately choose to call the police. Very soon after that, the local police officers drive into the village, heading straight to Chu Duck-thang's house to arrest him. The whole village crowds around to watch the massive scene. Chu Duck Thang sits inside the police car, separated by a layer of glass, his face completely covered in pure, total disbelief. I pull out my mobile phone and play that old video for him. Undeniable proof, laid right before his eyes. His face instantly turns pale, his whole body goes totally limp, losing absolutely every single bit of his usual arrogant attitude. The police car slowly rolls away, eking the village behind us. That heavy resentment weighing on my family's minds for over 20 long years is finally completely washed away for good, right here. The neighbors are all whispering and talking, straight up saying this is the exact price he deserves to pay for all his evil deeds. Later that night, my father's mood feels incredibly light and completely relieved. He eagerly suggests we go out for a celebration dinner, even inviting a few old friends who knew the whole truth to join the party. During the dinner, a few warm conversations casually wash away all those bitter frustrations that had been piling up for so many years. 2 months later, the court officially rules that Chu Duck Thang is totally guilty of destroying business operations, handing him a proper prison sentence, exactly as the strict law demands. After he goes to prison, his family's mushroom greenhouses get fully seized by the bank to clear out their massive debts. The court? It officially places a strict seal on their actual residential home. His wife takes the kids back to her parents' place, while his son packs some simple luggage and leaves to work elsewhere. That once noisy and lively household is now completely scattered, everyone just going their own separate ways. Time quickly flies by until the new year arrives, and my mushroom farming business just keeps booming, constantly shipping 5 full trucks of fresh mushrooms straight up to the big city. The longtime supermarket manager I work with even steps up, happily inviting me to expand my farming scale. I grab that perfect chance to lease all the surrounding abandoned fields, continuing to expand and build even more large mushroom greenhouses. In my free time, I sit inside the greenhouse, tending to the spores. Each plump, thick shiitake mushroom growing up just looks absolutely delightful to me. Outside the greenhouse, a warm breeze slowly blows past, while faint white smoke gently rises above the mushroom spore fermentation tanks in the peaceful air. Chu Duck Thang's old house. It is now just completely deserted and freezing cold. That old filled-in fish pond far away is now fully planted with crops. The scenery remains exactly the same, but the people here are completely different now. I raise my hand, gently brushing off the soft mushroom dust, calming my mind to fully focus on this brand new batch of spores, steadily and securely building my very own peaceful life. Yeah,